This should be a little blast from the past from Algebra 1. I know that because I'm teaching it right now in Algebra 1. Hopefully you paid attention. Oh, no. Okay, great news. You're about to get a quick little refresh. So parallel lines and perpendicular lines, we can identify and know that we have parallel lines and perpendicular lines from their slopes. So for parallel lines, you will have equal slopes. They will be exactly the same. So like for example, if you're comparing two equations, if you have y equals 2x plus 5, and if you have y equals 2x minus 2, this one has a slope of 2, this one has a slope of 2. So because they have the exact same slope, these lines would be parallel. So basically, if you have equations and they're in y equals or not in y equals form, we have to get them in y equals form. But if they're in y equals form, compare those numbers that are in front of x, that's your slope. If they are exactly the same, then your lines are parallel. That's the first thing for today. The other thing are perpendicular lines. Perpendicular lines do not have equal slopes. They have opposite reciprocal slopes. Opposite reciprocals. So opposite means that it's the opposite sign. So like positive and negative. So your slopes, one would have to be positive, one would have to be negative. And reciprocal means, anyone remember what reciprocal means? Not equal. Anyone remember what reciprocal is? What if I told you it had to do with a fraction? Like 1/2. Yes, that's so like reciprocals are basically like a fraction flipped. Yes.
What are we gonna do?
I already went over that, but I'll talk to you about it here in a second. Okay. Well, I actually don't. The answer is I don't know. I will know tomorrow in class.
All right.
We have a meeting tomorrow.
I forgot about the meeting tomorrow.
We have a meeting tomorrow morning to kind of go over everything.
Well, why don't you just switch us all over to your online class in Google Classroom?
Because you're not an online. Because you're technically not online students. I don't know. Maybe that's what they're going to tell us to do tomorrow. I don't know. I will know tomorrow. I promise. I will not leave you hanging. So opposite reciprocal slopes. If you have equations, like for example, you would have y equals 2/3 x plus 5, y equals, so opposite would mean it would have to be the opposite sign. So this one would have to be negative. And the fraction is flipped. So if this is 2/3, this one would have to be 3/2 x, and then that number doesn't matter. So if we look here, this one's 2/3. This one is the opposite sign, and it's the fraction flipped. So these two lines, if I were to graph them, they would be perpendicular. Perpendicular lines are when they cross, they form a 90-degree angle. That's what perpendicular is. Parallel means that the lines will never cross. Perpendicular means when they cross at a 90-degree angle. So the hard part today is going to be making sure you know what the slopes are and then comparing the slopes. It doesn't sound hard, and it really shouldn't be too bad because we have found slopes already between points and things like that. So today might not be too bad. So that's the only notes we're going to take in here. But I am going to have you grab out your assignment packet, and we're going to turn to page 11. So in your assignment packet, turn to page 11. And this is where we're going to do our examples. I could probably go through and just like tell you all these things, but I feel like math is such a good visual thing. We need to see it done and really see what you're going to be doing. So page 11 today is part of your actual assignment. So we're going to do part of your, well, what I had originally planned on being part of your assignment today, right now. So if we take a look at number 1 here, use slope to determine if lines AB and CD are parallel, perpendicular, or maybe it's neither. So parallel means that once we find the slope, that our slopes are exactly the same. Perpendicular means that once we find the slopes, our slopes are opposite reciprocals. Neither means that they're neither one of those two things. So we have to find the slope of AB. So find the slope between these 2 points right here. We need to find the slope between these 2 points, C and D. And once we know the slopes, we can then determine what type of lines they are, if they're equal or are they opposite reciprocals. And maybe they're not either one of those, and it would be a neither situation. You will have a neither situation in your assignment today. So, and it'll be really obvious. So to find slope, we learned slope last, I think, either Tuesday or Wednesday. What you should have done, or what I do to teach slope, is I don't use the formula, which probably is kind of weird, but I don't want to have to memorize a formula every single time. I take my points and I stack them. So I have -2, 3, and 2, 6. Oh, that's not coming in very well. -2, 3. So that's the A, and B is 2, 6. Once I've stacked my points, then I figure out what's the difference with the Y's, what's the difference with the X's, and then for slope, you just put one over the other. So how do you go from 3 to 6? Plus 3. So you go up plus 3. How do you go from -2 to 2? Plus 4. When you write your slopes, you do right over left. So you do 3 over 4. That's the slope of AB, 3 over 4. So we're kind of doing what you did last week, a little bit here and there, and we're adding to it a little bit. So now I'm going to find the slope of CD. So I'm going to take my points and I'm going to stack them. I have -1, 0, and I have 3, 3. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to figure out, how do I get from 0 to 3? I go up 3, so positive 3. How do I get from -1 to 3? I go up 4, so plus 4. So then I write my fraction as right over left, so I write it as 3 over 4. Once you have your slopes, then you need to kind of take a step back and compare and figure out, are your lines with these two slopes, are they parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Since these slopes are exactly the same, your lines would be parallel. It's kind of the hard part of what you're doing today. Page 11. Let's take a look at another one. We'll do number 2. So for number 2, we're doing the same thing. What's the slope of line AB? What's the slope of line CD? And then figure out what type of lines they are. So I'm going to draw a line between my points. So we're going to figure out what's the slope between A and B. So I'm going to stack my points. So stack my points, and I'm going to figure out, how do I get from one point to the other for Y's and then X's. So to go from 2 to 4, you go up 2. And then to go from 0 to 5, you go up 5. So then to write my slope, I write it, you go from right to left. So I do 2 over 5. So the slope of AB is 2 over 5. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the other set of points. I'm going to stack them. I have 1, 8, and then 3, 3. So how do I get from 8 to 3? -5. And how do I get from 1 to 3? +2. So when you write your fraction, you write it right over left. So -5 over 2. Then you take a step back. These two are not exactly the same. So these lines are not parallel. So to check for perpendicular, they have to be the opposite signs, which they are. This one's positive, this one's negative. And the fractions have to be flipped from each other, which they are. This one's 2 over 5, this one's 5 over 2. So this is perpendicular.
Well, this is pretty easy.
I'm hoping. And tomorrow should be just as simple. Maybe we'll see. I never know how it's gonna go. Do you want to see one more, or just for funsies? Okay. Number 3.
Bless you.
Bless you. All right, number 3. Same idea. We're gonna figure out the slope between A and B. So we're gonna stack my points: -9, -12, -2, and 2. And you're gonna figure out the differences. So how do I get from -12 to +2?
Plus 14.
Plus 14. Oh, I'm gonna miss like hearing people actually participate.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be teaching.
Participate.
I'm gonna be teaching to no one here for 3 weeks.
What about a Zoom class?
Yeah, it still won't be the same. I don't think.
Wait, we're gonna have to do that.
I don't
Oh, yeah, I
know.
forgot she doesn't know.
I don't
I'm
know.
sorry. I'm sorry.
All right, how do you get from -9 to -2?
Plus 8. No, plus 7.
Plus 7. So my slope is 14 over 7, but you can't leave it like that. 14 over 7 reduces to what? 2, or 2 over 1 works for me as well. I like 2 over 1. Good work. Now you got to do the same thing with the other points. You have -1, 6, -5, -2. So we've got to find our slopes, or our differences, I should say. How do you get from 6 to -2?
Minus 8.
-8. How do you get from -1 to -5?
Minus 4.
-4. So we have -8 over -4, but you can't leave it like that. -8 over -4 reduces to 2 over 1. So now your slopes are exactly the same, so these lines would be parallel. Any questions there? So that's part of what you're going to be doing today. 4 and 5, you're going to finish on this page here in a second. Turn to page 16. This is the other portion of what you're going to be doing today.
Yeah, TJ. Have a sip of that.
No. No, you're not drinking after each other. Gross.
It's mine.
Ugh. Okay, the other thing you are going to do today is take a look at equations and figure out from the equations, are your lines parallel, perpendicular, or neither?
Here's the hard part.
It is, but it isn't. So the main thing that if you are looking at equations, they have to be in y equals mx plus b form. And you're going to only be worried about that number in front of x. You're going to be comparing that number in front of x. So, hold on, I gotta stop this because this is